Guys, Nick here, and welcome to my review of the brand new Star Wars film Rogue One. And my biggest takeaway from this movie is this movie makes me appreciate A New Hope so much more. This movie was action packed from start to finish. So many great moments that remind me of why I love A New Hope so much. And A New Hope is hands down my favorite Star Wars movie. And I was just rewatching it earlier today before I saw the movie, and there's a lot of things that are in this movie that are obvious nods to certain things in A New Hope, and I'll get into those things in my spoiler review. I don't want to. This review is for people who have not seen the movie yet, so my thoughts on this movie. I thought it was a great movie. There were some pacing issues I had. The movie did drag a bit in certain spots. And there are some certain character moments that I feel like, again, just they didn't necessarily have to do that. But overall, I love this movie. I love the characters. I love the ending and the final act. And for a lot of you guys who are, aware of this movie, and look, for people like myself who, when I saw the critic reviews, when the embargo lifted a couple of days ago, a lot of people were saying, the third act is, the best part of the movie. And some people were saying, this movie is like the best Star Wars movie yet. And like saying it's better than The Force Awakens and da-da-da-da. And I still don't know where this movie stands compared to the other Star Wars movie for me. I'm going to have to see this movie at least once or two or a couple more times. And luckily I work at a movie theater, so I can see the movie for free whenever I want. And I still don't know where it stands as of yet, but this movie is great. It's, again, great action, great just building on the lore of Star Wars, and Jyn Erso was a great character, and I gotta say, this movie kind of re-cemented the fact that Darth Vader is one of the best, to me, the best cinematic villain we've ever had. And I love that they use him sparingly. If you're expecting him to be like the main villain of the movie, he's obviously not. That's director Orson Krennic and Ben Mendelsohn's character, who I really like Ben Mendelsohn as Orson Krennic. Because they start off because the movie starts with them introducing a history between, the Ersos and Orson Krennic, and that sets up the immediate tension between, Galen Erso and Krennic, and in building up to the final confrontation between Jyn and Krennic, I love the banter between all the different characters, and I'm sorry if this review isn't going to be super linear, but it's just, there's so much going on, and so many characters that I wasn't expecting to see that I saw, so many nods to A New Hope, and certain uses of characters that I, again wasn't expecting at all, that maybe like, it was just, oh my god, it was just, and again, hands down, Darth Vader was one of the best things in this movie, and seeing James Earl Jones back, and one thing I want to say, that, it was awesome having James Earl Jones back as Darth Vader, and seeing Darth Vader on the big screen again. One thing is just, you could tell James Earl Jones is getting older, because Darth Vader didn't sound, obviously, as young as, James Earl Jones did, in the 70s and 80s, when he was first voicing the character, and it's weird because James Earl Jones had just voiced Darth Vader in Star Wars Rebels last year, and then he does this, and I'm not saying the voice is bad. I'm saying it sounds different. It sounds like an older James Earl Jones. There are certain times where because I know that this movie is supposed to take place right before the events of A New Hope, so that's where the voice to me didn't sound as strong or as powerful as it did in the original trilogy, and that's fine. That's just a minor gripe I had, but from the characters between Jyn Erso and sorry, let me just pull up the little character list because I forget the names easily. Between just Mads Mikkelsen as Galen Erso, who I loved in this movie. And this is a good year for Mads Mikkelsen. I really liked him in Doctor Strange as the villain, and he was really, really great in this. And I love how his character allowed, his character was kind of the reason for the events of A New Hope to even happen. Because he's the one who he was part of the construction of the Death Star. He was the one that the Empire wanted, because of his knowledge of the Kyber crystals, and the use of the Kyber crystals was ultimately the final thing that made the Death Star what it was. And I loved how conflicted the Galen Erso was throughout this entire movie. And Mads Mikkelsen did a great job, and you really felt that he how much he cared for his daughter and Jin. And Felicity Jones, while I really liked her in the role, but I feel like the character, to me, while as much fun as I had with the character, I feel like she's kind of surface level to me, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like, because I've seen so many of the trailers and stuff like that, I kind of knew what to expect from the character, and it kind of did become what I expected from the character, which kind of sucks. And it's not a bad thing, but when I saw the character on screen, yes, there's a lot of great action in this movie, especially from her character especially. But at the same time, like, there wasn't more to the character than what I saw in the trailers and what I was expecting. But so there was that, and I loved Diego Luna in this movie. He was a great addition to this cast, and I'm happy that this movie, we're finally starting to see more people of color in the Star Wars universe, because that's been like a gripe that a lot of people have, especially when they keep casting white British females as leads in these movies, between Daisy Ridley as Rey, Felicity Jones in this, and then, you know, we're gonna have, what's her name from Game of Thrones, Emilia Clarke. She's gonna be in the Han Solo movie. So it's like, you have that, but then you also have, again, Diego Luna, you have Donnie Yen, you have Riz Ahmed as Bodhi, who was great in this movie. He's one of my favorite characters in this movie. You had Jiang Wen and Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera from Star Wars: The Clone Wars show. I didn't watch the show myself, seeing, again, the world building and going back to characters that we've seen previously. And another character who I loved seeing, well, there are a couple characters. I loved seeing Mon Mothma back. And it was the same actress who played her in, it was, sorry, I think it was Genevieve O'Reilly is her name, who played her in a deleted scene in episode 3 from Revenge of the Sith. And seeing her as Mon Mothma, she looks and sounds exactly like Mon Mothma from Return of the Jedi, which was great. Seeing Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa, I loved seeing him back. He was the one character I was dying to see, because I loved his character. Was one of my favorite parts of Revenge of the Sith, and seeing Jimmy Smits back in that role as an aged, weathered down character, and the fact that these events are so close to what's going on. I'm sorry guys if I'm stuttering and I'm just like losing my train of thought. I loved this movie, and I love seeing so many of these characters again, and one of my biggest standouts in the movie character wise was the new droid K2SO, who was portrayed by Alan Tudyk. And actually, I have a funny story about Alan Tudyk, to get it out of the way. A couple years ago at Comic-Con, you know, I only got passed for like one day at Comic-Con, and me and my aunt, who went with me that day, we were heading out. We were walking by Petco Park in San Diego, and someone bumps into me, and I'm like, oh, that was kind of rude. And then someone's like, oh my god, that's Steve the Pirate. And if you guys know, Alan Tudyk portrayed Steve the Pirate in the movie Dodgeball. And so I hear that, and I turn around, and Alan Tudyk was the guy who bumped into me. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. But at the same time, I'm like, he bumped into me and didn't say sorry. So that was just my little, meeting with Alan Tudyk. That wasn't an official meeting. But again, K2SO, there's so much of him that reminds me of C-3PO, but at the same time, he's a very direct droid. And he has a lot of the comedic moments in this movie, and I really, really enjoyed his moments in the movie. And he's a really badass droid, considering that, C-3PO can't exactly do much in terms of what he can do as a droid. So K2SO, he was a lot more mobile. He can do a lot more. He can be involved in a lot of the action scenes. So that's why I like seeing him in this particular role. Alan Tudyk, it was because they're able to use motion capture to portray the character, gave the character a lot more mobility, and he made him just a more active character, and a really fun and amazing character who had, again, a lot of great lines, a lot of great moments, and seeing his kind of relationship with Jin evolve from where it was in the beginning to very antagonistic to a very friendly and just a very friendly place by the time the movie ends. And there again other great characters, and Donnie Yen as again, I'm just going back to the character list. As Chirrut Imwe, he was great as the one character in the movie who's really, other than Darth Vader, who's really channeling the Force. And the way the fact that he's blind and he has not only himself, but Baze Malbus, who's Zhang Wen's character, as kind of like his eyes and ears, but at the same time he's allowing the Force to guide him, and he's not really a Force user, he's a Force believer, so he's like into like praying to the Force. So that's where like certain times in the movie it did feel like really religious, and that's, you know, Donnie Yen's character, and that's just how he is, and he believes in the Force. He's constantly praying to the Force, like letting the Force guide him in his actions, because, you know, we find when we first meet him, he's on the planet Jedha, which I believe is the birthplace of the Jedi. So that's where like he's almost like a protector of the Jedi and their knowledge and protector of like their birthplace. So that's where he's able to access the Force and learn so much of the Force, even though he's blind. And another character who I mentioned that I really enjoyed was I'm sorry, my mind's kind of all over the place right now. But, you know, Riz Ahmed's character in Bodhi, he was a former Imperial pilot with effects to the Rebel Alliance, and he's the one character in the movie that his actions also make this whole story throughout the entire movie happen, because he defects from the Empire because he's sent from Galen Erso to give this message to the Rebellion, and a lot of the Rebellion doesn't like him at first, but at the same time, it's just like, he's a really fun and enjoyable character, and Riz Ahmed gave us a really layered guy who, like, he just wants to do the right thing, and he just doesn't want to get caught in what the Empire was doing, and I can really feel that, and I really, really, really enjoyed what he had to do in this movie. And like, going back to what I said earlier about Ben Mendelsohn, Ben Mendelsohn's character, well, at sometimes he's kind of whiny, and that because Ben Mendelsohn's character in Orson Krennic kept trying to prove himself that he is worthy of being among the elites of the Empire with the Emperor and Vader and Tarkin. And seeing him, he was trying to get up there and prove to Tarkin and prove to Vader that because of his achievements with the Death Star, that he is worthy of being among them. And they kind of see him as lesser because everything that's going on with the rebels, and they don't trust him and all this stuff. And I really like what they did with his character for the most part, and ultimately where the character ends up. I really liked how the character was portrayed, even though he was a little whiny and he was a little over the top at times, but I enjoyed the character nonetheless. And one thing I haven't mentioned as much as I thought I would is the action in this movie. All the space, again, the third act, there's so many space battles going on, and there's an Easter egg for you guys, Star Wars Rebels fans. They don't say it as much, or they don't maybe make it blatantly clear, but you do see the ship that appears to be the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels in the final fight in the third act of the movie. And that whole final act, when you have all the rebellion ships coming on, they're attacking, and then like a huge swarm of TIE fighters coming up from this like Imperial base, and there's just so much actually going on between what's going on the beach. There's a huge rebel fight going on down there, to the actually going on inside of the Imperial thing where they're trying to get the Death Star plans and trying to transmit those. And then the space battles, every bit of action in this movie, in the space battles in the final act were what really were one of the many things that reminded me of why I love A New Hope so much, was the final space battle when they're going to take down the Death Star. And I love, again, how this movie reminds me how much I love A New Hope, because there's so many throwbacks to it, and just the space battles and the characters, and we see Yavin 4, and we see again the build up of the rebellion. We see that the rebellion, to some people, isn't just this. The rebellion isn't this black and white thing like the rebels are the good guy, the Imperials are the bad guys. That there is a bit of, there is. Again, it's not black and white. That it's a morally gray kind of place, and the rebels have done some really dark things, and that's what makes certain characters want to make certain decisions that go against their orders from the rebellion, to make them take their actions as they do in the film. And that's one thing I'm glad that they touched on. And there's so many more things I want to talk about, but this is my spoiler-free review, so I didn't want to talk too much about that. But I loved this movie. Again, I don't know where it stands in terms of the other Star Wars movies. It's definitely better than the prequels for me. And I don't hate the prequels as much as other people do. I enjoyed The Phantom Menace. I hated Attack of the Clones, and I enjoyed Revenge of the Sith for what it was, but nothing beats the original trilogy for me. I really enjoyed The Force Awakens, and this movie is up there. I'm going to watch it a few more times, and by then I'll have an actual rating of where it is in terms of the other Star Wars movies, but This movie was great from start to finish. It does drag a little bit in the middle, but once the third act picks up, it's like non-stop until the end. And the ending of this movie is one of my favorite endings I've seen of any movie in the last number of years. So if that doesn't sell you on this movie, then I don't know what else is gonna. This movie again was great from start to finish. I love the action, I love the characters, I love the throwback to Episode 4, the building of the Star Wars universe, and I'm just glad we got a good movie because of all the reshoot drama and everything going on in this movie. I was a little worried that this movie might not have been a good movie, and it delivers on almost every single aspect. Great characters, great action, and everything. Darth Vader again re-cemented as the biggest badass in movie history. I loved seeing him back. I love seeing the Star Wars universe back now. And yeah, if I were to give this movie a rating right now, I would probably give it as of right now, it might go up. I'll give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. It was a really great movie. It does drag a little bit. There's certain character moments that I think could have been handled a little better. But there's so much more I want to talk about in terms of spoilers, but I don't want to spoil it, guys. So those are my thoughts on Rogue One. What are you guys looking forward to in the movie? If you guys haven't seen it, if you guys have seen it, what did you guys think? Start your thoughts in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for all the other content I'll be uploading on my channel throughout the rest of my channel's history. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.